Hi there. Well, I'm coming to the end of my video uploads because I just can't see enough to be comfortable creating these. Um, as it is, I think I'm going to have to get my partner to read some of the poetry that I came up with or have come up with, or at least one of the poems anyway. But I really felt very motivated to create this uh, video with the pretentious title of The Great Analysis of I Am, I Am. And but it seems to me that when all boils down to all, esoteric systems of thought and Western magical tradition and mysticism all seem to point, in humanistic terms at least, to the establishment of the authentic self. So you go from the inauthentic self, the fake self, to authenticity, which is basically represented by the formula I am, which is represented down here with what I call under mind liberation or tantra. And you'll notice I have I am, and the first I am is small I. So it isn't even that you're identifying with I am in a fake kind of way. You really do feel I am. You feel settled within yourself. You feel untrammeled, untroubled, and that what you can say and what you can do comes from a point of integrity, instead of just going with the crowd, going with the with everybody else. So you can stand outside your norms, values, and beliefs and take a good hard look at them, and maybe declare to an unwilling audience the error of their ways, which you can say from a position of non-judgmental authenticity. So I am is quite important. It's really the rose of the cross. It's the establishment of the rose within the cross, and it's sort of where we come to as a result of initiation and the initiatory process, as it were. And initiation, of course, means to begin. So you begin and then you begin again, and you go through all these different onion layers until you get to the center, which can be one of three things, really, ultimately, as I will explain in a minute. So the great analysis of I am, I am. So you start off here, and I suddenly realized, you see, and this came from yesterday, when I went through a very, very bad day of depression. And I suddenly realized that pretty much everything that I do and think, including for this particular channel, and everything that I've written, and everything that I've come up with in a musical sense, is all fake. It's all basically a denial. Um, I either want to sort of go forward or step around the fact, and I want to deny in some ways or forms, in any way, basically to deny in any way my psychological pain. So this really is I am not. I want to be, but I am not. So I have this sense of being a complete and utter fake, which apparently comes across arises or rises up in some people. They have this feeling that they're really fake. Everything's fake around them, and that they're in particular are fake, and that they are just collaborators in a system that is based on oppression and hierarchy and power, and there's nothing they can do about it. So what are they denying? Well, they're denying their underlying psychological pain. And this pain is actually quite interesting. It's if you analyze pain, it's really the memory of fear, of sudden physical shock or psychological shock, and of depression afterwards. So that you are crestfallen, you are trodden on, you are downfallen, you lose your sense of authenticity as a result of being put down by the system or by another person or persons. And men or women, it doesn't matter who it is. I wanted to go on about, patriarchy and hierarchy, but I decided that that's too complicated. And anyway, we're heading to the stage now where we can see that hierarchical structures and hypocrisy and violence even are entering into feminism. So, they're becoming like all women are feminists, but some are more feminists than others and feminist than others. And we're already seeing hierarchy coming into it and power structures coalescing. So we see that the memory of fear, the memory of physical pain or some kind of psychological shock to the system, and depression afterwards make up this psychological pain. They're sort of the three demonic powers, if you like. And of course, fear is one of the great Gnostic demons. Of course, the fear is what the whole world is actually based upon. One of the pillars on which reality is structured. So it's conditionality and fear really that drive us to become inauthentic and fake. Because of course your depression also drives you to lethargy as well, and morbidity, present morbidity and lethargy. And I suppose here we come on to Stephen Molyneux's idea that people are trained to fail in life. Various different political, ideological, religious systems train children to fail and to think that they are failures. So lethargy and morbidity stem out of political, ideological, and social oppression from both men and women. I have to stress that. And so they basically are, I am broken. You have to hear the broken personality. I am broken up. But you're also broken up and dancing, to quote Jim Morrison. And so, of course, to get out of this broken up feeling, you go into denial. So you go into sort of doing a kind of mad dance around the room and expressing yourself in all sorts of crazy ways, very often through repeated patterns of failure, indeed, especially with relationships, because this is the only way you have of escaping the pain that you feel, this present morbidity and lethargy. So you have all this going on. And then, so this is I am broken up, but then eventually, this is the cross of suffering. Eventually, underneath this, there is I am struggling to get out, which is in humanist terms is just a feeling of authenticity. Metaphysical terms talk about soul and godhood and selfhood and things like that. But anyway, if you're an atheist, you can't really go that far. So you can't really visualize a soul bubbling about or bobbing about in the middle of your brain, sort of thing. Because if you're a humanist and materialist, there is only the brain. So we can't talk about metaphysics. We can only talk about metaphor and analogy, being metaphorically describing brain structures. But anyway, so then at the center of this is, I say, the rose, the heart of God. And this is the objective, is to become aware of this heart of God, of this rose. And if you look down at the rose is basically a top view of the chalice, of the sangral, of the vessel for the blood of Christ. So in the midst of suffering, we have Christ, and then in the liberation from death and suffering, we also have Christ and Christ's blood contained within the Holy Grail. So basically, I mean, I don't know what lies beyond pain, actually, because I think, like everybody else, I can only see the pain. I can't really almost see what I am would be, because I've been floating in an ocean of pain for so long that I can't even imagine what it would be like to not be in pain, actually. And not be made morbid and lethargic as a result of the memory of fear, shock, and depression. So and post traumatic stress disorder, like. So We have to look here at the various causes, if you like, of pain, and the cause of pain is abuse, and abuse can be emotional, physical, or sexual. And I've got here a little chart here, only referring to my own life, really. We have mother, we have father, we have sibling, we have youth institution, by which I mean school, whether it can be foster home or whatever. And then we have the predator, the sexual predator, usually but not always a friend of the family, or some kind of relation within the family that attaches themselves to the family in order to sexually predate upon the children of the family. And that happens in a great many cases, actually. So, tend to think of sexual predators being within schools and institutions, but they can attach themselves to families, where, of course, there's a good source of young flesh for them to abuse. Um, and again, it can be male or female. And I don't know, sort of to give you an example of how this might work. I mean, I was a TA, teacher's assistant, for a year in a junior school, and the head teacher there was a female. I mean, it was a lovely school. Don't get me wrong. Quite progressive, but also quite conservative as well. A good mixture, I thought, of progressiveness and conservatism, and quite into academic achievement, but also into personal growth as well. So they had a nice balance there. I thought the head teacher did achieve a very good balance. So I'm a TA at this teacher, and one day, I was in a classroom, and I was actually in a class which I hadn't been in before of quite young children, maybe sort of 6-year-olds. And these two 6-year-old boys were bouncing around, and they came up to me and started bouncing on, wanting to play fight with me and bounce around. And I said to them, mind my glasses now, in a quite cross tone, but well, I was all right with it, really. They were just being boisterous boys. And then immediately the teacher saw them, and she snapped her fingers and she said, "Right, you two on the floor, sit on the floor now, or you've got a 1 minute timeout as a punishment." And I looked at these two boys, and they looked so crestfallen and depressed. And I felt basically that her punishment, which admittedly wasn't fear or physical, fear based or physical based, it was simply, it was a legal punishment within the school. I just felt that it was a bit depressing for the children to be punished in that way, punished for being boys. So it's a bit sexist, really, I have to say, because boys do like to play fight, especially with an adult male that they feel safe with. And obviously, they decided that I was a very safe person to be with, and they could sort of play fight. And boys will be boys. I mean, I'm not saying that some girls don't like to play fight as well. They do. And I'm not saying, talking about gender stereotyping here. I'm just saying in general, boys like to be boys and lads, especially in a culture of South Wales where, lads are sort of a bit quite laddish, really. They like the rugby and the football, and they get in trouble with the law a little bit. And they like to fight, and they like to have girlfriends and fight over the girlfriends, and boyfriends for that matter, because some of the South Wales gay boys are quite laddish as well. Come to that, So again, you can't rely on stereotypes to get you through the day, and I'm not. I'm just saying that these two boys are just being a bit boisterous, and they were sort of crushed, really. But as a TA, I couldn't go up to them and say, I wanted to say, go up to them and say, women, and sort of like that, which of course is stereotype and sexist on my own part, of course, well, women. But I wanted to kind of say something nice to them about it, but I couldn't and wouldn't undermine the authority of the teacher. But in that sense, I'm a bit of a collaborator, aren't I? Because I couldn't say anything to ameliorate their sense of depression, boiling up and crestfallenness as a result of being punished simply for being boisterous, really, which I didn't think was just and fair, and they didn't think it was just or fair either. But I mean, they'll get over it because it's not that big a deal, really. But I'm just saying, maybe I could have taken the teacher aside and said, I think you were a bit harsh on those boys, really. To actually put a actual punishment like that on them, just simply. I mean, I was in control. I didn't mind them jumping around on top of me, like. Um, but then, it's like that dog, he's getting boisterous and bouncy because he knows my partner's coming home, and so he's all excited. And they were just boys being overexcited, and this is a little kind of little example really, but I couldn't go up to the teacher and say I think you're a bit unjust, because I wasn't being I am. If I'd gone from if I felt good in myself, I could have said that to her, but I felt sort of tongue tied because I haven't achieved I am. I couldn't say anything in front of the boys or the class because that would undermine the authority of the teacher, and I'm not going to do that. But I could have gone up to her privately, but I still felt tongue tied about doing that. And this is something I'm going to have to come back to in part two of this exciting video on the analysis of I am, because I've run out of time.